Welcome to the presentation of a lecture from Gnostic Radio, a free public service from the Gnostic tradition of Samael Aun Weor. Gnosis is the root wisdom of all the world's great religions. Gnosis is a universal teaching of practical science, whose goal is absolute liberation from suffering and the complete development of the human being. This lecture is one of hundreds available as free downloads, podcasts, or transcriptions. Our lectures range in topic and complexity in order to address the many needs of humanity. We invite you to browse our library of lectures to find teachings that suit you. Each Saturday, Gnostic Radio broadcasts live and includes a free online classroom allowing listeners to see images, read related scriptures, and ask questions of the speaker. To learn how to participate, visit gnosticradio.org. Gnostic Radio is a service of Glorian Publishing, a non-profit organization. The lectures and radio broadcast have been made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. Most spiritual schools recommend a donation of $10 to $20 per lecture. To make a donation, visit gnosticradio.org. Now, with heartfelt wishes for the end of suffering for all creatures, we begin the lecture. May all beings be happy.
In the previous two lectures about the fuel for spiritual experience, we discussed the foundations that are present in all religions to take advantage of energy, to harness that energy in order to awaken our consciousness, in order to provoke a new kind of experience in life. And the energy that provides that possibility in Sanskrit is called prana. And as we mentioned in those two lectures, prana is the energy in everything. None of us are separate from prana. What we are is prana, but modified. That prana, or energy, is modified according to cause and effect. Simple laws in nature that produce everything that exists. And likewise, spiritual experience of any kind is produced by cause and effect, not by chance, and not merely by divine grace. Even divine grace is cause and effect. It isn't just random. Grace or blessings that come from above come because of cause and effect, because of karma. So whatever spiritual tradition we might feel connected to, these laws are fundamental in every tradition. They have different names. In this particular series of lectures, we're using Sanskrit and Tibetan words to describe the same experiences that are had in non-Tibetan or Sanskrit-based traditions like Christianity. And as evidence of that, I found a beautiful scripture written by Thomas de Kempis some hundreds of years ago in a book called The Imitation of Christ. This book, The Imitation of Christ, is 100% Gnostic. It is also 100% Buddhist because of the principles it expresses. If you read the book without being caught in the terminology, you will find a beautiful expression of Mahayana Buddhism. So I'll read you a short quote which sets the stage for today's topic. He wrote, "Ah, Lord God, my holy lover, when you come into my heart, all that is within me will rejoice. You are my glory and the exaltation of my heart. You are my hope and refuge in the day of my tribulation. But because my love is as yet weak and my virtue imperfect, I must be strengthened and comforted by you. Visit me often, therefore, and teach me your holy discipline. Free me from evil passions and cleanse my heart of all disorderly affection, so that, healed and purified within, I may be fit to love, strong to suffer, and firm to persevere. Love is watchful. Sleeping, it does not slumber. Wearied, it is not tired. Pressed, it is not straitened. Alarmed, it is not confused. But like a living flame, a burning torch, it forces its way upward and passes unharmed through every obstacle. So this short excerpt is pure Tantra. 100%. He's describing the exact same thing that is written in the yogas of Naropa, the yogas of Niguma, the Kalachakra Tantra. All the Tantras state exactly what this passage is explaining, which is through devotion, through love, the heart explodes and is inflamed with divinity. That is the ultimate key for spiritual experience. In the first two lectures, we've described how to harness the vital energies of the body, not only the physical body, but our inner bodies. And through harnessing that energy, we fuse it, we harmonize it with the divine. And that's what sets the stage for the divine fire called kundalini or kundalini to fill our heart, to fill our mind, to give us experience, but moreover, to help us be a fit vessel for that fire so that we can express the light of that fire in the world. To prepare humanity for that experience, all religions have been organized in three groups, or three stages, we could say. The first stage is always the introductory level. In Buddhism, it's called Sutrayana, or Shravakayana. And this is the introductory level that is concerned with ethics. And not just ethics as in something that you should do because somebody tells you to do it. It's ethics based in real understanding of cause and effect. It's the understanding that when I perform a certain action, it causes suffering. And when you really see that, you don't want to perform that action anymore. That's real ethics. And that's what the introductory levels of every religion are supposed to accomplish, is to guide you as a soul to that experience of knowing in yourself, when I do that, it hurts me, it hurts someone else. I should stop. This is what provides the comprehension of suffering, what suffering is. And people working in this level of religion are generally focused on that. What is suffering? How do I suffer, and how do I change that? So this is the Sutrayana level. Generally, it's public level instruction. When someone has really grasped that, they've started to really understand that the way they behave, not only physically but also psychologically, has an impact on other people, then they want to change that. They want to start behaving in a way that's beneficial to themselves and beneficial to others. And this is what causes to emerge in the mind of that person, a new type of spirit, a sensitivity to the suffering of others, and a gradual letting go of one's own needs. It's where someone starts to shift to start to realize, I can make a difference, not only for myself, but for others. In Buddhism, this is called Mahayana. It's the greater level. It's the second level of instruction. In really any religion, you have this level of teaching. And this is all about cognizant love. This is when the attention of the person shifts away from themselves and towards others. This is not something theoretical. It's also not something that's merely an aspiration. We begin with an aspiration. We begin with an intention. But someone who's really walking as a Mahayana practitioner, someone who's living the second level of instruction, doesn't even need to think about it. It shows in their actions. It shows in what they do. It shows in how they deal with people, how they walk through life, how they deal with people at work, at church, at temple, on the subway, in the car. In every action, they demonstrate this. Not to show off to their spiritual friends how spiritual they are, but because even alone, even unseen, they have this attitude in their mind. That Mahayana type of attitude can only emerge when someone spontaneously and naturally has also incorporated that first level of ethics. That basic introductory level of understanding cause and effect is summarized in the word renunciation. So you can put for the first level ethics or renunciation. But what is that renunciation? We all think that renunciation means to put on robes and go live in the forest. It doesn't mean that. Renunciation means to renounce harmful action, whether anyone else knows it or not. It's irrelevant. What matters is what's in our mind. But someone who has a true spirit of renunciation simply does not want for themselves and does not want to perform a harmful action, even if it can be done in secret. Because that person knows in their experience that that action will produce harm, seen or unseen. It will result in suffering. That is real renunciation. And when that spirit of renunciation, based in that understanding of suffering, has expanded and is truly concerned for the welfare of other beings, this is the birth or the emergence of cognizant love. This is when this person has moved into Mahayana level mind stream. This is why the Master Samael Aum Veor stated very clearly, what matters most is how we treat each other invisibly in our minds. Because, physically, when we go to work or we go to school and we deal with people, we can be very nice and polite, friendly, smiling. But in our mind, we're killing each other. You may have someone at work that you have a conflict with that you're very nice to face, but in your mind, you beat them, you punish them, you humiliate them, you treat them bad. It's wrong. What's done in your mind is no different from what's done in your body. They both have a cause and effect. They're both ruled by cause and effect. Once someone has demonstrated and proven that they have this spontaneous type of mind that's very concerned about the well-being of others, they can be moved into another level of training. We usually hear this type of training called Tantra. It's also called the esoteric level or the secret level, where the teachings are secret and you need initiations in order to receive those teachings. There's a reason for that. In the third level instruction, which in Buddhism is called Tantrayana, Mantrayana, Vajrayana, has many names. These types of teachings are kept secret precisely because most people don't have a mind that is concerned about the welfare of others. In order to take advantage of the higher level instruction, you need that kind of mind. Because that level of instruction is designed to accelerate the growth of that kind of mind. The mind that's concerned for others, not for oneself. That is the whole purpose of Tantra. Nowadays, people think Tantra is sex. It isn't. The word Tantra means continuum, or stream, or flow. We're talking about prana. And the way prana moves, this is energy. And that stream or movement of energy is harnessed through Tantra. But that stream of energy must be harmonized with the divine. And that divinity is love. Cognizant love. Not selfishness. Not lust. Not pride. Not envy. Not gluttony. Not greed. Not fear. If we have a mind that is still ruled by those characteristics, and then we enter into Tantra, we're playing with fire, literally. It's a big responsibility and has to be used with caution. Unfortunately, nowadays, people, because the doors to this level of instruction have been opened, all of us think, oh, well, naturally, I deserve to be in the third level. Naturally, I'm the type of person who should receive the highest teachings. We have a lot of pride, a lot of ambition, spiritual ambition, spiritual pride. So we think that we can rush right on past all this boring stuff about ethics and all this boring stuff about loving each other and compassion. Yeah, we get that. We know we're supposed to love each other, but give me the good stuff. I want the secret teachings. I want the higher knowledge. I want to be taken into the temple. I want to know the real deal. This is foolish. It's exactly the same in sort of a similitude of a 3-year-old child wanting to be taken into the surgical hospital and let them use all the surgical tools. It would be stupid to give a 3-year-old scalpels, anesthesia, and all the other tools that a doctor would use. That would be stupid. Because the child's not going to know what they're doing. They're going to start playing games and hurt themselves and hurt other people. Tantra's no different. This is why, for thousands of years, the rules were very clear. To be taken from one level to the next by an instructor, you had to have proven in your mind that you had the capacity to harness the higher tools with responsibility. Do you want to know why now people fall from the path? Why they fail? Why they hurt so many people spiritually? Why there are so many black magicians? Because they all have rushed to get the higher teachings and did not have a foundation in the first 2 aspects. So they rush ahead to get powers, to awaken, but without real comprehension of karma and without real comprehension of love. So they become what we call a hanasmus, a person who has a split personality. They have powers, they have awakened, but they have no understanding of karma and cause and effect. They have no love. They are a devil mixed with an angel. This is very common, unfortunately, and becoming more common. And it's again caused by pride, by ambition, by a lack of training. It's very important that we have a strong comprehension of the foundations of our religion. That foundation is primarily cognizance of the suffering of others and how our own actions affect them. The reason this is so important is because in order to enter into Tantra, to enter into the higher level of teaching, to receive that empowerment from the divine, you need a mind stream that's prepared for it. And that preparation is in cognizant love. To summarize the classes that I've given so far on this topic, I found a quote from Milarepa, who some say is the greatest Tibetan yogi. And he said this: "Bliss rises when the vital heat is fanned, when air from the nadis flows in the central channel, when bodhicitta flows from above, when it is purified below, when red and white meet in the middle, and the joy of a leakless body satiates one. These are the 6 blissful experiences of yoga. If you've paid attention in the previous 2 classes, you'll get this easily, because I explained everything in this quote. To synthesize, the 6 blissful experiences of yoga are spiritual experiences. It is to have an awakened consciousness, empowered and energized, capable of seeing, not merely what's physical, but beyond the physical. And that experience arises due to these conditions that he explains very clearly in this quote. Bliss rises when the vital heat is fanned. What is vital heat? We explained about dumo, which is a Tibetan word that means fierce woman. Dumo yoga is the introductory practice to harness the vital forces of the vital body, which are, in their ultimate synthesis, sexual energy. That energy is the energy of the Divine Mother. It is her ability to create through us, in us, physically or spiritually. When that vital heat is fanned, means when air blows it. What is the air? It's the breath. It is prana. It is lung, the vital wind. That fanning is not just by doing a pranayama. That fanning is through being cognizant and aware and conscious from moment to moment. That is how prana, the vital wind or the lung, fans our vital energy every time we breathe. From moment to moment, our breath, conscious, is fanning that vital heat. When air from the nadis flows in the central channel, we explained the 2 nadis on the sides of the central channel, one red, one white, solar and lunar, the sun channel and the moon channel, rasana and lalana. Through pranayama and other exercises, those energies of the side channels meet to spark the central channel. When bodhicitta flows from above, when it is purified below, this is the main thing. Bodhicitta. This is the main thing. So let's explain what bodhicitta means. This is, of course, a Sanskrit word, and it has 2 primary components. The first word, bodhi, means wisdom. In Hebrew, the same word is chokmah. Bodhi, or wisdom, is Christ. It is pranya. It is the intelligence of the Buddha. It's the intelligence of Christ. It is the raw entity, the intelligence, the wisdom, the compassion of all the gods. It isn't a person. If you can imagine in your mind for a moment all of the Buddhas and angels that exist, all of them, and all of their minds are one. That is Bodhi. Can you imagine in your mind a splendorous display like the stars in the heavens? And every star is a Buddha. And in every Buddha is a mind. And all of those minds are one mind. That is Bodhi. That is Chokmah. Because in Christ, there is only one. There is no individuality. Christ is one. The second part is Chitta, which is Sanskrit. It's very difficult to translate directly into English. Usually it's translated as mind, but in all the Asian philosophies and religions, mind and heart are not separate. Mind-heart is one thing. Mind-heart. We in the West tend to think of these as separate things. And there's a reason for that. But as a psyche, as a person, as a soul, they are really one. Chitta is that mind-heart. But this word chitta comes from chit, which means consciousness, or to be conscious, or from consciousness. So if you put all that together, Bodhichitta means wisdom, heart, mind, or conscious heart, mind. If you've studied any Buddhism, especially Mahayana Buddhism, you've heard about bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is usually described to beginners as the longing to serve others, to help others, the aspiration to be of service, but specifically to take all beings to enlightenment. This is how, on the public level, bodhicitta is defined. So if you go to any teaching by any great lama or any great monk or leader from Mahayana Buddhism, whether in China or other countries, they'll talk about bodhicitta. And it's that altruistic intention to save everyone from suffering and take them out of suffering. This is beautiful. But it's only the beginner level. It's just an intention. It isn't an action. To turn that intention into an action requires something very specific. Something that's not revealed in the introductory level teachings. You see, this word bodhicitta has many levels of meaning. We've all heard the public level meaning, but that's not the only meaning. It has levels. So we know the beginning is to attain enlightenment, to lead others to enlightenment. But when you go a little further, and you actually go deeper into the Mahayana level, you find out that bodhicitta is actually a form of perception. And this makes sense when you remember that bodhicitta means conscious mind-heart. Awakened mind-heart. And what does it mean to be conscious or awakened? It means to see, to perceive. Not to imagine, not through a fantasy, but to actually see something. Bodhicitta is a capacity to perceive. It's a type of consciousness that's different from other types of consciousness. Moreover, it's related with the highest paramita called prana. The paramitas, or conscious attitudes, or perfections, are virtues or qualities of consciousness. And prana is the highest. It is the highest perfection or virtue in a Buddha. Prana means wisdom, intuitive knowledge, objective knowledge. It's a type of perception that is far beyond physical perception. Prana relates specifically to the upper triangle on the tree of life, to Bina and Hokmah. It is a type of intelligence and wisdom that perceives from that level of existence. So bodhicitta, in a deeper level, in the Mahayana level of instruction, means to have the ability to see as prana. But specifically, that means this. First, the person has established that cognizant love, that altruistic intention to save others from suffering. They move to the next level when they comprehend the nature of the absolute, emptiness. Prana is perception of the absolute, of the void, the emptiness. Philosophically, this may be difficult for us to grasp. What it means is that prana perceives both conventional reality, which is what we are all seeing, and ultimate reality at the same time. None of us have that. But bodhicitta developed has that. But this is only the middle level of meaning of bodhicitta, because there's a secret level of meaning. The ultimate meaning of bodhicitta is only revealed when someone has earned it. I'm talking about in traditional instruction, in the previous era. Nowadays, we have to talk about it. In Tantra, bodhicitta means sexual energy. In fact, the Tibetan word for bodhicitta can be either translated as conscious mind-heart or semen. It's the same word. What does that mean? It means that to develop bodhicitta, the true capacity to bring others to enlightenment, you need energy. You need a way for that inspiration or that intention to work. And that is through the sexual waters. This is why in the Lukang we see a painting like this one. The Lukang is the secret temple of the Dalai Lamas, where all the secret teachings of Tantra have been preserved for quite some time. And they were painted on the walls there as a reminder for the Dalai Lamas while they were doing their practices in order to keep the teachings fresh and vibrant. This painting is of Lu. A Lu is a type of spirit, an elemental goddess or god. Is a type of intelligence that's in nature. Every element has Lu, but especially bodies of water. And this secret temple, which is behind the Potala, is called Lukang, which is the temple of the Lu. And inhabiting that lake, it's said, are these goddesses or elemental intelligences who teach those who deserve to learn. And those who deserve to learn are those who have developed a mind stream capable of serving others, not themselves. This picture shows a Lu or Naga rising in the waters, and in her hand she has a jewel. This is not just any jewel. This is Tsintamani. This is, in Tibetan, it's called Norbu. This jewel is the wish-fulfilling gem. It's a gem that can fulfill any wish, any desire, any longing. But she's protecting it. She's holding it there, rising out of the waters, in the exact same way as the Lady of the Lake, who has Excalibur for King Arthur. It is exactly the same symbol. Excalibur represents the sword of discriminative wisdom that Manjushri holds, which can cut through appearances in order to serve others. The Norbu represents the same thing. But you'll notice something specific about this jewel. It's inflamed. That fire is Kandali, or Kundalini. That is the fire that's extracted from the water. That fire is the very energy of the Divine Mother. That is her ability to create, which manifests through this sacred stone. This tradition of the wish-fulfilling jewel spread into the West over many centuries. We call it the philosopher's stone now. It came from this. It wasn't made up in the West. The philosopher's stone is that stone that can transform lead into gold. The lead is our mind. The gold is Christic, belongs to Christ, Chinrezi. It is the gold of the jewels and gems that the Lu wears. It is the gold of the Buddhas. It is the gold of a master. It's the gold that shines from a Christified master. This is why in traditional devotional religious art, gold is the primary element. If you look at tankas, if you look at icons, religious icons, gold leaf is very common. In any religious artifact or element, gold is used because of the metal relates to Michael and the ray of the sun. It is the gold of Christ. And it represents a very specific quality. This image represents the same thing that the picture of the goddess holding the jewel represents. This image shows the Christian representation of the same teaching. Here we see the Virgin Mary. And on the table is a cup. And from the cup rises the face of Christ. In our ancient traditions, I don't know if you're aware of it, but the Holy Grail was always considered made of stone. And in some ancient traditions, it's confusing to study because they interchange between talking about the Holy Grail as a cup or a stone. And there's a lot of confusion. It's only in the last few decades or a couple hundred years that non-initiated writers and folklorists and mythologists and people who like fantasy converted the symbols into something for comic books and for children's tales. And we've lost the richness of the actual myth of the Holy Grail. But the story of King Arthur is a story of a bodhisattva, someone who incarnated Bodhichitta. This cup represents two primary symbols. The cup is always feminine, actually more than two. The cup is the body, our body. The cup is sex. The cup is the mind. And you can't separate any of these from the others. You have a body because of sex. You have a mind because of sex. Your mind influences sex. Sex influences your mind. And the body's in the middle of all of it. The cup is all of these. The cup is our life. The cup that we have is filthy. And this is why Jesus in the gospel says, "Woe unto you, hypocrites. You clean the outside of the cup to make it look nice, but the inside is disgusting." That is our mind. Our minds are disgusting. Let's be honest. Our minds are full of greed and lust and pride and envy and gluttony and laziness. Our minds are not holy. Our minds are animal. We have to clean the cup, the mind. We have to clean the cup, sex. We have to clean the cup, the body. And through that cleansing, gradually, Christ mind can emerge through polishing the cup. And this is what both Thomas de Kempis and Milarepa were explaining in the quotes I read to you. Thomas de Kempis says, "My love is imperfect. I need divine help to cleanse myself, to cleanse my mind, to make my love clean." Milarepa is saying the same thing. When Bodhichitta is purified below, he's talking about the mind. It needs to be cleansed. We need that. We can do that, but not by ourselves. We can't do it on our own. We need a lot of help. First, we need the help of the teachings. If any of us were so smart that we could get to enlightenment on our own, we'd have done it already. We're not that smart. All we're doing is producing more suffering every day. We need radical change today. Not just the intention to change, but actual change. Empowered change. That first comes through studying the teachings, through learning the doctrine. Not just reading some books and getting a few ideas and thinking, yeah, this is a good idea, I like it. It means practice. Putting it into practice daily. To change one's mind. To change one's behavior. To really and truly become a better person. Not just to think about it. Not just to mean well. But to actually do it today. Because you see, everything that is in your life now is because of what you've been doing before now. Not because of what you've thought or wished for or hoped for, but because of what you actually did. So if you want something different, something better, even if it's only for yourself, you have to start acting in a different way, in a way that will produce the effects that you want. Furthermore, if you want to help others, you have to do even more. And we can't do it alone. We need help. The teachings help us. But that's not enough. The proof of that is obvious. Humanity has had spiritual teachings for thousands of years, and look at the situation we're in. Humanity's had thousands, millions of people who believe devoutly in their religions, and our situation has not gotten better. We can make offerings. We can give donations. We can go to church every day. It's not going to change things. What will change things is the quality of our mind. The change has to be inside, in us. So learning the teachings is the first part. How to change and why. That's the beginning level. And the second level is we start to realize that the way we behave hurts other people, so I need to change to stop hurting others. And that's when we start to develop this different kind of mind, a mind of Mahayana inspiration that wants to help others, to stop hurting others. Well, here is where the real help will come. Who have you known that has that quality? That's more concerned about you than themselves. Some of us think, oh gosh, I don't know anybody. I think I'm the only one who thinks about me. It might be true for some of you, but I think for most of you there is a person, probably more than one, but at least one. Your mother. Your mother. Do you remember her? I'll state without any doubt, the single greatest teacher I've had in my life is my mother. No one ever taught me more about love. The ability to give and give and give at any cost for the sake of the child. That is Mahayana. That is Bodhichitta. It's a seed form. It's the beginning of it. That is Bodhichitta. In your experience, it may have been your father or another family member who showed you that, who gave and gave and gave for you and asking nothing back. That is Bodhichitta. It is selfless, cognizant love. It is a love that knows it must give and does it because it must. It's love. That's real love. If you want to enter into the real teachings of Tantra, you need that. That is not love for oneself. It is love for humanity. It is love for others. No matter what group they come from, no matter what country they come from, no matter what skin color they have. It's a love that wants to give and give and give and give and give. The one that can teach you that is your mother. Maybe not physically, maybe not your physical mother, your divine mother. If you want to learn Bodhichitta, if you want to enter into the higher teachings, you need to ask her. She will teach you. She's the one. She has loved you forever. In spite of your discontent and ingratitude, in spite of your mistakes, she loves you. She always has and always will. Moreover, she is not separate from you. People hear about the Divine Mother and they think she's somewhere else. She's not. Her most sacred temple in the universe is in your heart. What do you have in your heart to decorate that temple? Greed, gluttony, lust, pride, vanity, anger, resentment, fear. We need to clean our temple. Quickly. Nonetheless, she knows that and will still help us. In every religion, the Divine Mother is depicted in different ways because she actually has no form. Your Divine Mother has no form. She isn't Western. She isn't Asian. She is formless. She is intelligence. She is the intelligence that can create a world system. She is an intelligence that your mind cannot understand. And she is a level and type of love that will blow you away when you experience it. It will radically change you when you experience it. In Asian traditions, she's depicted in many forms. This picture is of green Tara. It's stated in one tradition that when Christ, pranya, that wisdom mind of all the Buddhas that I explained to you, when that mind of all the Buddhas looked at suffering humanity and naturally felt compassion, from the mind's eye of that mind, a tear came. That tear is the Divine Mother. That tear of compassion from Christ is the mother who rushes to help her children when they're in need. You can call her Mary, Maria, Ramio, Coatlicue, Tara. You can call her Athena or Hera, Fricka. These are all names of the Divine Mother. She's formless. This particular image of green Tara represents a divine, wrathful aspect or protecting aspect. This is the mother who is actively engaged in protecting her child. Imagine the mother bear protecting the cub. That mother bear is ferocious. And that's why in this tradition she's called Dumo. That's a Tibetan word that means fierce woman. She is fierce precisely because our heart mind, the Buddhata or the Tathagata Garbha we have, the soul essence, is threatened. It's trapped by pride, by lust, by envy, by gluttony, by greed, because of our own actions. We have encapsulated our soul in a very tight, compressed knot of karmic causes and conditions. And we suffer. And we make others suffer. And our mother's not happy about it. So she's ferocious and fierce, trying to free her child, which is you. And you wouldn't believe what she goes through. The suffering of our Divine Mother. Anyone who's a parent and has seen their child suffer knows the pain of that. But imagine watching your child suffer for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Can you imagine the pain? That's the pain she feels for you. In one book, The Magic Runes, the Master Samael wrote something very penetrating. He said, "Oh, ignorant mortals, how often has your Divine Mother visited you, yet you failed to recognize her?" It's true. She never leaves us. She can even manifest herself in other dimensions to visit us in dreams, but she can also come physically to visit us. But we don't remember her. We don't recognize her. You might think that sounds crazy, but it happens. She is the mother of the universe, after all. So this aspect of the Divine Mother, you see this rosary of heads around her neck. Those heads are your egos. Or our egos, rather, that she's waiting to consume, to destroy, to eliminate. She can't do that as long as part of us is trapped inside of it, because she won't hurt her child. The science of Dumo Yoga is the science of harnessing her creative powers. How does the mother create? Through her womb, through her breasts. She nourishes her child. But through her womb, she creates and forms the child. The child of our soul is formed in the womb of our Divine Mother. That womb is sexual. That womb is the kundalini. It's fire, but it's her fire, her intelligence. See this fire around her? That's her. No one can awaken the kundalini by tricking the Divine Mother. You can't trick the Mother of the universe. She doesn't care how much money you have. She doesn't care what school you belong to. She doesn't care what your name is or if you wear a robe or not. What she cares about is sanctity, purity, chastity, and most of all, charity. 3 factors. Birth, death, and sacrifice. This is what she cares about. If we follow her guidance and live by her rules, this fire of hers can be born in us. And that's what that quote by Milarepa is explaining. How the fire emerges in us to create the soul. This is another aspect of the Divine Mother, who's also Tara, but white. These are 2 faces of the same goddess. This aspect shows Tara as also protectress and savior, and around her are 8 forms of suffering. These relate to the 7 primary defects and ignorance. Greed, gluttony, jealousy, anger, lust. She will defend us from them. She will help us comprehend them if we let her. If we keep putting ourselves into the middle of lust and pride and envy and gluttony and greed, she can't do anything. Because we want it. But if we're trying to separate ourselves from those elements and cleanse ourselves of those elements, she can help us a lot. She, after all, has all the knowledge, all the wisdom of existence. What she does in the process of awakening her fire inside of us is to prepare our soul. She creates what in some traditions is called the wedding garment. What in Kabbalah is called the Merkabah, the chariot of Ezekiel. In Hinduism, it's the chariot that Krishna drives. Krishna represents Christ. The chariot is our soul. The chariots in every religion. Apollo drives his chariot across the heavens. That chariot is the soul. Krishna drives the chariot with Arjuna, with the horses that drive it. Those horses can represent the senses, but they also can represent the bodies of the soul. In Egyptian mythology, this is called Sahu. It is the bodies of the being. Astral body, mental body, and causal body. The Divine Mother takes her forces and energies, raises them up in us in order to create this soul, this vessel. So that ultimately we're put in a position where she can then give birth to her son. That son is Christ, the Savior. Seems odd, doesn't it? If you think about what I just explained, the Christ gives birth to the Divine Mother, who gives birth to the Christ. Right? That's what I said. Now you understand why Dante, in the Divine Comedy, in the very end, said, "O Divine Mother, daughter of your Son." Now you get it. Dante was another Gnostic. The Divine Comedy is pure scripture. Christ, Chinrezig Avalokiteshvara, Apollo, Jupiter, Heracles. All of these, Krishna, all of these represent an incarnation of Christ. Osiris. These are Christ, born in the soul. Now let's analyze that for a moment. So remember I explained that Christ is prana, the primordial wisdom mind of all the Buddhas, whose chief characteristic is cognizant love for all existing things. How will that be born in your heart? If your heart is like it is now. Your heart has to be prepared. Can you take the wisdom mind of all the Buddhas in the universe and have that light shine through your heart as it is now? It would destroy you. It would completely obliterate you. That's an energy of such a voltage, you would not be able to sustain it. That's why we have levels of the path. That's why you can't rush to the end of the path. You have to start where you are and be properly prepared. You need a vessel capable of transforming and directing that energy. That vessel is the soul. We don't have it yet. Jesus said, with patience you will possess your soul. We have to make it. And the one who does that is our Divine Mother and our innermost, who create that. This image is of Chinrezi, which is the Tibetan name for Christ. Do you see his hands folded in front of his chest? That is the mani, the norbu, the sintamani. Do you remember the stone, the wishing gem that the Lu was holding out of the water? That's what he's got in his hands. That wishing gem, the gem that can fulfill all wishes and longings, is held sacred between the palms of Christ at his heart. This is no accident. And this is because that wishing gem is not what we think it is. We hear about the genie coming out of the bottle who can grant any wishes, and we always think, oh, I wish I had all the money in the world. Or we want a stack of chocolate pies. Whatever it is that we want. This is not the type of wish that this gem fulfills. What this gem fulfills are the deepest longings of your heart. And I know you think it's chocolate, but it isn't. It's to be free of suffering. It's to be happy. That's really what we all want. To be happy, to be at peace. But let me tell you something. It's impossible with our heart in the state that it's in now. You cannot have peace if you have anger. You cannot have happiness if you have pride. You can never have satisfaction if you have lust. Because these desires, these egos, can never be satisfied. They cannot bring peace. They cannot bring contentment. They cannot reflect Christ. Real peace, real love, real contentment come when the heart is clean, when the heart is tranquil, when the heart is simple. That's why this stone is held precious by Chinrezi. If you think about this for a moment, Christ is the very ground from which existence emerges. Christ is the fire of all living things. It is the essence of life. Christ is prana. And to that intelligence, the intelligence that has created everything The most precious thing is that stone. Money. And guess what money means? In Sanskrit, this word money is translated usually as jewel or gem. It's written with 2 letters, even though it looks like 4. The first letter is a square, which is exactly the same as the Hebrew mem. You see the mem? This Hebrew letter mem is also the number 40, right? We all know that because we just did a course on the Hebrew letters. Well, this Sanskrit letter mem is the 40th Sanskrit letter. That's not a coincidence. Jesus was in the desert 40 days. The floods rained 40 days and 40 nights. The Israelites were in the desert for 40 years. 40, mem, water. Mem relates to water in Hebrew. So mani, the second letter is an in, like the Hebrew nun. What's interesting is that this word mani is the very heart of the most precious mantra in Tibetan Buddhism. Om Mani Padme Hum. Everyone's heard that. Even people who don't know about Buddhism, they've heard this mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Most people translate it into English as the jewel in the lotus. Mani is that jewel. But listen, the word mani has more meanings than just jewel. It means anything rounded. It means a magnet, a lodestone. But in Tantra, it means penis or clitoris. Look it up in the dictionary. You see how Christ is holding that gem in his hands? How does Christ create? Through sex. Through the heart. Not through lust. This is why the highest level of instruction is sexual. This is why the students who are walking all the lower yanas to reach that highest yoga tantra have to be prepared to have a heart of bodhicitta, concerned more for the well-being of others than themselves, so that they can learn to use their own money, their own jewel, their own gem, their own precious element, the most sacred part of the human organism, sex. It's the most powerful, it is the most sacred, and it is the one that we make the most filthy. It is the one that we use as a plaything to hurt ourselves and others, merely because of pleasure, because of ignorance. M and N in Sanskrit spell mani. M and N in Hebrew spells mana. Everyone's heard about the manna in the desert? That word manna doesn't mean bread. I know in Sunday school we all heard that God was throwing bread from the clouds. No. That's Sunday school. The word manna literally means blessings from above. Isn't that the same thing as the gem that Christ holds? Moreover, if you look at this Om Mani Padme Hum, and you listen just the first part of that mantra, what do you hear? Om Mani. Amen. Amen. Yeah, the Tibetans have been saying Amen for a long time. Amen. What does Amen mean? Faith. If you take that M and N and you put an Aleph in front of it, it spells Amen. What does that mean? In Tantra, it's very significant because the Aleph is related to the air, to lung, prana. In other words, when you take prana with your breath, you're alive. You live. Prana is the source of life. So if you take prana with your mani, you take life. You absorb life. You use life, which is what we're all doing. Life is given and taken through sex. Depends on how we use it. If we misuse sex, we take life. We kill. This is why in the Zohar, it states very explicitly, he who expels his sexual energy because of desire is equivalent to a murderer. Kills. Because he kills the capacity for God to create. So for thousands of years now, all the people have been ridiculing this passage because they don't understand it. The power of God, of the Divine Mother, to create the soul is in the sexual energy. So when that aleph, that air, is taken in and controlled and used, it creates life. The way that happens, the way we live, is by use of energy. Everything we are, everything is energy. The body, the mind, are energy. But energy and matter are indivisible. It's the same thing, but modified. Everything you are is matter and energy that are in exchanging with each other. What we are now is the condensation into matter of energy that we put into motion in the past. And everything that we're doing today is putting in motion energy that will crystallize tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. That alone should give us cause to really reflect on what we do with our time and our energy. To really realize that what we do is what we become. What we think is what we become. That's why the Dhammapada, the first teaching that the Buddha gave, the most important scripture in the Sutrayana level, states, we become what we think. That's the very first passage of the most widely read book of Buddhism. We become what we think. We become what the mind projects. It doesn't mean that if you sit there and imagine that you'll be the president, that you will become the president. It doesn't mean that. It means that as you are constantly going from moment to moment with that stream of thought that's always thinking about me and myself and I, and then me again, you become that. Selfish, suffering, ignorant. It means that. The pain and suffering you have now are a result of the way you think, the type of mind stream that you have. Change your suffering by changing your mind. Not by saying, oh, I'm going to change my mind today. I'm not going to be a Christian anymore. I'm going to be a Buddhist. That's not the kind of mind change we're talking about. We're talking about changing the way you think, the way you direct thought, the way you direct emotion. It's a cognizance of oneself from moment to moment. Not just for a brief moment every once in a while, but constant watchfulness. This is the basis of training in Tantra. The first two levels of any teaching are to train you to be cognizant of your actions, not just physically, but psychologically. And through that cognizance, you're directing energy. Contemplate that very deeply. Through every moment, you are directing energy. When you take on and add the tools of Tantra, you're directing even more energy. So make very sure you know what you're doing with your energy. Because if you take the tools of Tantra and continue using your energy in a selfish way, you will 100% without any doubt become a demon. What's called asura. Without any doubt. It's happening. It's happening all over the world. People that think that they're smart and think that they're clever and think they deserve these kind of teachings, and so they rush into them and make a mess. And that's why there's so many spiritual groups and people causing so much pain. Be very clear about how you're using energy and how you use your mind. We need these tools, but we have to use them smart. That's what this image shows. This image is called Lungta. It's of a horse. And on his back is that mani, the Norbu, that wish-fulfilling gem. This symbol is quite old. It comes from many different shamanistic traditions, especially the Bön tradition in Mongolia and Tibet. It's been adopted into Tibetan Buddhism gradually. If you've ever seen a prayer flag, this is on it. Lungta means wind horse. It also means river horse. So now that we've been talking about prana, about air and water, you know what this means. That wind horse is you. It's your vital body. It's your energy in motion. And this image represents what we should be. A vessel, a vehicle for Christ. A vessel or a vehicle that carries that wish-fulfilling gem of Chinrezi. In other words, we should be a bodhisattva. Someone who takes that wish-fulfilling gem and displays it and uses it for the benefit of others. And that's what a prayer flag is supposed to represent. A way of the winds taking the prayers to benefit all beings. But there's a deep esoteric significance hidden in those images. What's hidden there, it's what's hidden about bodhicitta in general. It's very beautiful to have the aspiration to develop bodhicitta. It's very beautiful to have the intention to become a Buddha or angel or master in order to help other beings. We highly encourage it. In fact, the most important scripture in Buddhism, in the Mahayana level and above, is a book about bodhicitta, which stresses repeatedly this importance. And we've got some copies for you guys to study. If you want to know Buddhism, you need to know this book. In Sanskrit, it's called Bodhicharyavatara. It's by a master named Shantideva. This is the single most important book about Buddhism on the planet, as far as something you can buy in a store. And we got some copies so you guys can study it. If you want to know about what I'm teaching, you need this book. But what's not taught explicitly in the written scripture is what I'm trying to explain to you in these lectures and what the Master Samael taught in all of his books. Bodhicitta is beautiful, but a mere intention is not enough. For any energy to be empowered and to work, it needs a method, a means to express. Energy needs a channel. Energy needs a conduit. What is the conduit for bodhicitta? There are millions of people in the world following Mahayana Buddhism. Very devoted. And this is beautiful. And the ones who are very serious, and the ones who really commit themselves and are dedicated to developing this type of mind, will one day discover the secret truth about bodhicitta, which is that if you waste your sexual energy, you can never develop it. If you experience the orgasm, if you expel the sexual force, whether physically or mentally, you can never develop bodhicitta. It's impossible. Because the sexual force is bodhicitta. There's no separating them. There are millions of people studying Buddhism who continue to fornicate because they're not prepared. They need to learn. They need to be taught. They need to be prepared. Otherwise, their efforts result in very little. So for you who now know this, you now have a Norbu, a wish-fulfilling gem. If your wish is to achieve enlightenment, you can do it. Apply these three factors: chastity, charity, and sanctity. Chastity is to hold that vital essence and to transform it. The way that it's taught in the yogas of Naropa and Niguma, the way it's taught in Kalachakra, the way it's taught in Kabbalah, the way it's taught in Christianity, and all of the esoteric traditions. Keep that energy and learn to transform it. It is not easy in the beginning. But gradually, the body learns. And this is why in the Kalachakra Tantra it states, little by little, the body disposes of the habit of emission and adopts the habit of non-emission. This is in the Kalachakra. Anyone who's studying or a student of Kalachakra needs to know that. That we have to develop the habit in the body of non-emission, of holding the energy and transforming it. What happens there is that sexual matter in the body is the vessel for energy in the vital body. That is prana. That is lung. When we do our practices, meditation, pranayama, mantras, runic practices, yantric practices, we're taking those energies and directing them. So when we're doing anything in life, we need to be cognizant. Because everything we do is directing those energies. Some students complain. They say, well, I've heard this teaching, and I see it makes sense, and I get it, and I'm saving my energy, but I'm not having any experiences. Let's be honest. Saving the energy is not the main thing. It's the beginning. But to fuel experiences, you have to wake up. All the time, from moment to moment. Be cognizant. The truth is, you don't have experiences because you're distracted all the time. When you go home, you just go to sleep. It takes a continual effort, especially in the beginning. It takes a lot of effort before you start to learn, and it starts to become natural, and you restore the natural, intuitive way of living. And then it becomes normal. It doesn't take the effort. Then your effort is on other things. The beginning is the hardest. The body fights because it has long habit of wasting energy. But the fact is, in order for you to develop bodhicitta, to have this type of mind, you need the energy, you need the matter, you need the vessel, the vehicle that can transmit it. You need to save that energy and work with your energy in a smart way. Well, this is what Milarepa is describing. That energy in your body is vital heat. Saving sexual energy is only one part of that puzzle. It's what begins it. But in reality, you have to start saving energy everywhere. The energy of thought, the energy of emotion. All of this goes out through your energy of attention. How you pay attention and what you pay attention to. Saving your energy just means you're trying to start accumulate those forces. But if you're just wasting them all day long with bad behaviors, you need to change that. And once you start changing those bad behaviors, then that energy can accumulate, and then you can start using it. And then experiences come naturally. In the middle of this quote from Milarepa, he says, when bodhicitta flows from above, when it is purified below. This is a very esoteric statement that has levels of meaning. It does apply to the nadis in all of our inner bodies and physical body. It applies to how a certain type of energy flows from above and needs to be purified below. But the important aspect here is psychological. What's really important here? It's psychological. There's energy coming into us constantly from above. Energy that keeps us alive. We're taking in energy through breath, through food, through water, but also through what we see, through what we hear. Impressions are a kind of food. If you're feeding your mind garbage through TV, through music, through friends, through going to places you shouldn't go, through looking at things you shouldn't look at, you're making your heart temple impure, and you're corrupting the energies that are coming into you from above. There has to be a rigorous discipline or change in our behaviors. This is what is meant in the next passage when it says, "And the joy of a leakless body satiates one." What is a leakless body? Firstly, it is a body that does not leak sexual energy, merely on the physical level. To not expel sexual energy, period, ever. That is a leakless body physically. But Milarepa was way more than a literalist. When you study what he taught, there's immense meaning in his teachings. The leakless body also means the body of the mind. Does our body of the mind leak? That has to stop. If we really want spiritual experience, stopping the leaking from the physical body is important. And difficult at first. But more important and more difficult is to stop that leaking in the mind. To stop sexual fantasy. To stop fantasizing about our anger, about our pride, about our gluttony, our fears, our worries. Projecting all kinds of things about ourselves and others in our mind, which is all a very huge waste of energy. The very notion of being present and not thinking terrifies the ego. And that's why when most of us hear about it, we say, "I can't do that. That's impossible." You can. And when you do it, you will start to taste what real happiness is. That's why this is called one of the 6 blissful experiences. When you can be fully present, not merely physically, but psychologically, emotionally and mentally, and in your will, fully present, not thinking. There's a kind of bliss in that. That bliss is not artificial. It isn't imposed on you by something outside. It isn't imposed on you by making the effort to be present. It is a bliss or joy that bursts spontaneously into your mind because it is the natural state of your mind. The natural state of the consciousness is pure happiness. Joy. Love. If you don't believe me, watch a child. Watch a child who's not worried, who's not thinking, who's just playing and happy. And at any given instant is ready to be altruistic, ready to give. Not these spoiled kids that most of us have, but I mean the kids that have not yet been spoiled by our culture. Altruism is natural and normal in the very young, and it becomes covered up and buried under pride and jealousy as the child ages, as the ego incorporates. But before that ego incorporates, you see these beautiful virtues in children. We all have that. We lost touch with it because we love our ego too much. Spiritual experience begins there. We set all these prerequisites about ethics, about behavior, about saving energy, and everything else. But the spiritual experience that we need emerges spontaneously and naturally and easily when we're not thinking, when we're centered, when we have our energy intact, and when we pray. And that energy, that happiness that spontaneously bursts out of the heart is love. It's love. That is what the higher teachings seek to harness and develop. Because in us, that love is just an embryo. Most of us have completely lost touch with it and hardly know what love is, have barely a concept of what selfless love really means. Maybe we've never experienced it or never activated it in our own behaviors. We need to. If your heart is dead and cold, begin with the steps that I outlined. Start by meditating on your actions. Really contemplate what you do and why. And if it's not helping, start to really contemplate the suffering of others. Seriously contemplate it. You might need some kind of intense therapy. I don't mean going to a therapist. I mean letting your Divine Mother teach you and show you the reality that's going on around us all the time. This world is not the rosy, everybody's smiling place that we see in commercials. It isn't. Suffering on this planet is the worst it's ever been. I'm sorry if that's news to you, but it is a fact. Right now, the suffering on this planet is the worst it has ever been. And I know our modern culture likes to think things are getting better and better. They aren't. There are no facts to support that, even though we all have mobile devices and we think that's really cool. It hasn't eliminated suffering. There's more slavery in the world than there ever was. Documented fact. There are more weapons in the world than there ever was. We are now on the brink that at any given instant, a single crazy person can push a single button and end all life. That's crazy. We're in a constant state of warfare. Nowhere on this planet can you find clean water. Nowhere on this planet can you find pure food. Where do you find happiness? Where are you going to run to? What job, what city can offer you peace and solitude and solace and happiness? None. Let's face reality. Let's not run from it. Let's face it and change it. The reality is the happiness that we need can only be found in our heart, in spite of any circumstances outside of us. And that happiness emerges and is developed through bodhicitta. Through the application of this science, if you're a very serious person, by serious I don't mean that you look serious or act serious. I mean someone that practices consistently. You will realize it. Bodhicitta is scientific. It's not accidental. It doesn't come because you're in a particular group. It comes because of work. Moreover, we need it. Humanity needs it. This planet needs it. One person with bodhicitta can change a lot. I mean real bodhicitta, not just the aspiration. We've had millions of people aspiring to have it. I mean the real thing. And let's make a distinction here, too. Just because someone has created the solar bodies or become a Buddha does not mean they have bodhicitta. These are different. There are many saints, many angels that have developed great virtues. Very beautiful. And in Asia, they're called pratyeka Buddhas or Shravakas. These are very saintly beings, but they have no bodhicitta. We call them walkers of the spiral path. Nirvanis. They are Buddhas, and many of them have human souls who are on the planet now, who are teaching religion, Gnosis, Buddhism, Taoism. And we all see them and think, wow, they look so angelic. They must be a real master, a very high master. They always wear white. Or they always have a lot of followers, so they must be a very great master. We're very easily tricked by superficial appearances. Very easily. A real master, a high master, cannot be recognized by physical evidence, ever. In fact, the highest ones are completely anonymous. And there are many now on this planet working to help people. I'm not one of them, so don't look at me like that. I'm not one of them. There are many helping humanity. And most of them are anonymous. And they are not sickly sweet with a lot of sentimentality and pink puffy clouds. I know a lot of us like that, but a real master is not like that. A real master who has bodhicitta is serious. Because suffering is serious. Is not a game. Such a master is extremely rigorous and dedicated and devoted. We need to emulate that. We need those qualities. When you go to some spiritual groups and everybody's very fluffy and light and smiling and happy, this is nice. It's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But don't think that that's there because there's a master there. That can all just be personality. Because some people like those qualities because it makes them feel safe and secure. It makes them feel like they're okay, they can rest for a few minutes and smile at everybody and eat cake and feel like they're being spiritual. It has nothing to do with mastery. And there are other masters that go around, or people that go around talking about love and generosity, and that we have to love each other. This is good. We need that. But that's not mastery. It's easy to talk about love. The real master is the one who sacrifices, who serves, who asks for nothing. We need to emulate that. A great example of bodhicitta, cognizant love, is Samael Aun Weor. Samael Aun Weor has terrific bodhicitta, but he's an extremely severe master, very serious. If you've heard him talk, you know what I mean. I don't mean talk like on the street talk, or talk just for a couple of minutes listening to a lecture. I mean his voice, his message, his teaching. It's extremely penetrating, very serious, very dedicated, and pure love. Samael is the angel of Mars, which is the force of love anyhow. He's the angel of love. The virtue of Mars is love. Another great example of bodhicitta is Padmasambhava, who also is a very serious master. Some of the pictures show him smiling, and this is the one you see most commonly where he's smiling and he has a lot of angels around him. It's very beautiful. But when you know him, when you know his story, you know his energy, you know his teaching, you will then know why some people in Asia think he's a demon. Because of his ferocity. He is ferocious. Because of compassion. Because of love. So let's not confuse bodhicitta with pink puffy clouds and lollipops. It can show itself with sweetness. But it can also show itself with severity. So I'm going to read you one little quote from this book that I'm recommending, the Bodhicharyavatara, or the Guide to Bodhisattva's Way of Life. This little quote is probably the most famous passage from the book. It's chanted daily by Buddhists all over the world. And there is a hidden esoteric teaching inside of it, which I won't reveal it to you. If you meditate on this, you'll see it. But I'll read you a little piece of it. This is a prayer. It says, "May I be a protector for those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, and a ship for all who wish to cross the water. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest, and a slave for all who want a slave. May I be a wishing jewel, a magic vase, powerful mantras, and great medicine. May I become a wish-fulfilling tree and a cow of plenty for the world. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. Just as the previous lords of bliss gave birth to Bodhichitta, and just as they successively lived by the Bodhisattva practices, likewise for the sake of all that lives, do I give birth to Bodhichitta, and likewise shall I too successively follow the practices. In order to further increase it from now on, those with discernment who have lucidly seized Bodhicitta in this way should highly praise it in the following manner. Today, my life has borne fruit. Having well obtained this human existence, I've been born in the family of Buddha, and now I'm one of Buddha's children. Thus, whatever actions I do from now on must be in accord with the family tradition. Never shall I disgrace or pollute this noble, faultless family. Just like a blind man discovering a jewel in a heap of trash, likewise, by some coincidence, Bodhicitta has been born within me. It is the supreme elixir that overcomes the Lord of Death. It is the inexhaustible treasure that eliminates all poverty in the world. It is the supreme medicine that quells the world's disease. It is the tree that shelters all beings, wandering and tired on the road of samsara. It is the universal bridge that frees beings from wretched lives. It is the dawning moon of the mind that dispels the torment of addiction. It is the great sun that burns away the misty ignorance of the world. It is the quintessential butter from the churning of the milk of Dharma. For all those guests traveling on the path of samsara who wish to experience true happiness, this spirit will satisfy them with joy and exalt them in the highest bliss. Today, in the presence of all the saviors, I invite the world to be my guests at a feast of temporal and ultimate bliss. May gods, titans, and all be joyful. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Please.
Master, instead of Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Masi Padme Hum?
Right. On the public level, the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum is the mantra of Chinrezig. It's the mantra of Christ. And that mantra has a tremendous power because in its syllables are the elements of nature, the elements that are inside of us that we need to transform. So on the public level, people receive Om Mani Padme Hum, and they practice that mantra with great devotion, even hundreds and thousands of times a day, in order to incarnate or harness the forces that are synthesized in that mantra. The Master Samael Aun Weor taught that mantra, but he also taught the esoteric aspect, which is an aspect that is not taught in the physical plane by any other master, but in the internal worlds it is. And the difference is one syllable that changes from ni to si. So it's Om Ma Si Padme Hum. And that changes the mantra. That's because that S sound, the S, is the sound related with the central channel. It's the sound related with the Divine Mother. It's the hissing sound of the sparks of the red and white channels that meet in the middle. And when that spark happens, it makes a S sound. That mantra helps provoke that. So that's why he taught it that way. But don't go to a Tibetan Lama and say, what about that Om Masi Padme Hum? He'll give you a big lecture about why you shouldn't pronounce it like that. Because physically, in the physical world, they don't teach it that way. Is there another question? Please.
Could you also say that Masi Pa is a representation of, when you go to Kundalini, you have Ma, Pa, and you have the SI for the sexual energy?
It might be. It could be. All the mantras hide meanings like that. Like if you take Om Mani Padme Hum or Om Masi Padme Hum and you stack it vertically, all of those syllables relate to the elements of nature. Fire, air, earth, water, ether, etc. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that meaning was hidden there also. It's also true in other mantras. Like in the previous lecture, I told you about Lalana and Rasana, the two side channels. Those are the names in Tibetan Tantra for Ida and Pingala. And the sound of the central channel is tss, right? Well, everybody in the tradition of Samael and Vihora has been doing this mantra for 50 years. La, ra, s. That is Lalana, Rasana. S. And they didn't know. Now you know. Another question? Please.
Can you elaborate on how Christ gives birth to the Divine Mother?
Sure. Christ gives birth to the Divine Mother in the superior aspect in relation to the world of Absolute. So Absolute is the world of archetypes. And that world is the primordial force or energy of the clear light. At this level is when everything is in mere potentiality. In order for creation to occur, there has to be a coupling. So that first force, the prana, is called Christ. It's the ray of light that emerges from the Absolute. It's Christic. But it is not particularized. To be particularized, it has to be born through a coupling, a sexual union. This is the symbol of the Yabyum, or Father-Mother, or Ama-Ima, or Shiva Shakti. All these contain the same thing. The Elohim is that. El and Eloah, God and Goddess, united. And in that uniting, Osiris and Isis, they have Horus, who is Christ, particularized or individualized. And that's the difference. So what you see there are levels of trinities. And it's hard to grasp until you understand the four worlds in Kabbalah. But once you get the four worlds, it makes sense. Yeah. Another question? In the back? Yeah, this question is asked a lot, and I'm really glad you asked about how to stimulate the heart, especially when you're an intellectual type of person. You begin by analyzing your behavior. You can't stimulate your heart artificially, and you can't force it. The heart is extremely delicate. Master Samael told us that the heart is so sensitive that it can feel and sense seismic movements on the other side of the planet. But of course, all of us, our heart is so deadened and numb that we can't feel that. But when we regenerate our heart, when we restore it to its normal function, that's how sensitive it is. And to restore that, you can't do it by force. Like modern times, we want to take a pill and fix it. There's no pill. You can't go to the doctor. You can't pay somebody $1,000 and get your heart improved. It takes time. It takes energy. It's going to be different for each person, how they restore the powers of their heart. All of us have our own idiosyncrasy. And this is why I'm emphasizing, pray to your Divine Mother. Call her, rely on her, beg her to teach you. Her temple is your heart. That's her temple. She needs to restore it. She needs to make it strong because she needs to use it. So if your heart is dead, weak, you don't feel things, you don't feel compassion, start with that. Another step that you can take, very helpful, there's two levels to this. First is the most important part. You need to start meditating on suffering, not just thinking about it. Especially the intellectual types. Stop reading so much. Stop theorizing. Stop thinking. You need to move your energy into your heart. And this mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum or Om Masi Padme Hum, has precisely that function. It awakens and opens your heart. So use that mantra continually, all the time. Om Masi Padme Hum, chanting it, chanting it, and visualizing all of the energies that you breathe and that you take in through everything, feeding and nourishing your heart. In that, you need to be contemplating suffering all the time. Everywhere you go. Everything you do. Contemplate suffering. Look at suffering. Look at people. Be aware of what's going on around you. Look at how people are suffering. You don't see happy people. You might see people who fake happiness or have a temporary happiness, but you don't see real happiness. You need to understand that and your role in it. And if that's not enough, go and look at someone who's really suffering a lot. Visit a hospital. Visit a hostel where someone's dying. Visit a family member, especially one of your own, who's alone or ignored or shunned or suffering. Visit them. Spend time with them. Give. The single best way for you to develop the powers of your heart is through altruism, through charity. But if you do it in a forced way, like, oh, I have to give because my teacher said so. It's part of the three factors of Gnosis, so I have to be doing charity. So I have to go and give. I have to go do this and that. No. You're not going to get anything from that but resentment because you're not doing it willingly. The best way to give altruistically is anonymously, without anyone knowing you've done it. I have a friend who was in the exact same situation, very intellectual, couldn't feel anything, was quite cold. So this guy decided that one thing he was going to try to do is to go serve the homeless. He didn't tell anybody. He just went a lot and spent a lot of time dealing with people who were angry, who were very lustful, who were very arrogant, who were suffering all kinds of addictions and diseases. And this guy would feed them hand to mouth and take care of them. This is a guy you would never imagine doing that. He's like a tough guy, acting like macho. It transformed him. It softened him, taught him a lot. I'm not saying you should do that, but you can emulate that example. Through your actions, you can produce change. The point of that was to help them, but it was also in order to help himself. And this is a curious thing about Westerners, let me point out quickly. Westerners have this strange mental thing about giving and altruism. We're very skeptical, with good reason. We've been burned a lot by a lot of false teachers and false teachings and politics. So we don't want to give. So when we hear about charity and donations and altruism and helping others, we're very skeptical. We need to change that. We need to give. It doesn't have to be known. It doesn't have to be open. It doesn't have to be a lot. But we need to give from our heart because we know we must give. It needs to be a natural thing, a spontaneous thing. It's funny that, for example, a lot of Westerners go to Tibetan temples and are very enthused with Tibetan Buddhism. And there are many centers opening all over the world. So people assume that the ones with the money are the Americans and they're the ones supporting the Tibetan culture. They're not. You know who's supporting spread of Tibetan Buddhism? The Chinese. Chinese are the primary donors to the temples. And the Chinese are the ones that invaded Tibet. So how is that? Interesting. It's not the Americans that are giving the money. We need to analyze that part of our behavior. Why we're so skeptical of being altruistic and giving. Why are we so afraid or fearful or burned? But back to the topic about the intellect. We need to activate the heart. And this is done through love, through developing a loving attitude. Not sentimental and not fake, but sincere. To start dealing with each other in a very sincere way from our heart. Honest. And there are also mantras we can use. Om Mani Padme Hum is one. Om Masi Padme Hum. Any mantra with O stimulates the heart chakra. Another question?
If the Divine Mother comes to
If someone has a dream with their Divine Mother and there is a pregnancy or a birth involved, it probably represents some type of spiritual birth. It may or may not represent a solar body. It depends. You'd have to meditate further and analyze that. Birth is symbolic. We have many kinds of birth. So you'd have to analyze it further.
Another question back here.
Mm-hmm.
In many scriptures, John the Baptist is always mentioned instead of Christ. Why?
The mention of John the Baptist in scriptures is symbolic. John the Baptist represents the Bodhisattva, the human soul, who first has to be established and teaching the word and preparing the way for Christ. So John the Baptist represents us. He represents the initiate who's created the solar bodies and is choosing to enter the direct path. And once he does that, then Christ comes and takes over through him. So that's the meaning. There's a whole course about the Bodhisattva path, John the Baptist, the Son of Man, the Son of God, and all of that is explained in the course, The Path of the Bodhisattva. It's quite deep, but you can learn more about it there. Any other question? Okay, thank you. The presentation of this lecture was made possible by donations from listeners like you. Help Gnostic Radio to help others. Make a donation by visiting gnosticradio.org. For questions and deeper understanding of this lecture, we invite you to explore the wide variety of resources available on our websites. Thank you for your support. May all beings be happy.